Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to another weekend workshop. Today, you're in for a treat. We're going to be hearing from Marg Hachey about how to grow an advisory board. I'm so excited to have you here, Marg, and for everyone who's joining us on the call so far, and we'll continue as we're progressing this morning. It's so great to have you all here. And just for those of you who might not know me, my name is Carrie Ramsey. I'm the project manager for the We Can project, which is led and funded by Queen's University. And so we've been around now for 3 years and a little bit, and it's been so wonderful to work with more than 1,200 women entrepreneurs. And so thank you so much for joining us for yet another workshop today. As I always do, I'd love to give you an opportunity to connect in the Zoom chat, to introduce yourself. Perhaps if you don't know some of the folks on the call, let us know what your business is, and perhaps where we can reach you as well. And as you're doing that, I'll take a moment to acknowledge that I am connecting to this workshop from the Queen's University area, which of course is situated on the ancestral territory of the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe peoples. Now, some of you may know last Friday was actually a pretty important day here in Canada. It was the National Day of Awareness for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. And I was asked to contribute to a digital magazine feature, which was written on this subject. And at first I was a little bit surprised because I'm a white settler. But her point was, you know what, we want many voices involved here. We don't just want this to be, a fight for justice by the Indigenous peoples. And her point was the more voices that we can have involved in this cause, the more important it was. So I recognize my responsibility as a white settler to be involved in conversations that affect Indigenous peoples in general. And so I certainly listen more than I speak, but I'm learning, and I certainly hope that we will all continue to consider the land where we are situated, as well as what we can do to be a part of the truth and reconciliation movement. So thank you so much for those of you who are joining us today. If you haven't already, go ahead and introduce yourselves in the Zoom chat. I know that some folks are continuing to join us. You're in for a treat today. So Marg Hachey is with us, and she'll give a little bit of her background today. Probably will blow you away in the process. I had the privilege to meet Marg in person last week at an event where I was speaking. It was so wonderful to see people in 3D. But also I've interviewed Marg on my podcast before, and I do have insight into her story. You're going to enjoy learning from her today. So I also am going to sit back, Marg, and learn from you, as I always do. So I will hand you the virtual microphone. It's such a pleasure to have you with us here today.
Well, thank you very much, Carrie, and thank you for inviting me. It's really my pleasure. And I want to personally welcome all of you today. And I'm going to do my very best to make the time we spend together valuable for all of you. I'm going to share some of the things I learned being an entrepreneur. I'm going to share a little bit about my background, but I will definitely tie it into advisory boards. So first of all, now we're going to, of course, we always test everything and everything works beautifully. There we go. Now it's going to move. So a little bit about me. I want to share with you that I am a serial entrepreneur. I've had many businesses over my lifetime, and I actually had my first business at the age of 10. My sister and I sold guppies. Do you know what guppies are? Those little tropical fish. And they breed like crazy. So we never had a problem with inventory. We always had lots of inventory. And we used to sell them to the Woolworths department store. Now I'm really dating myself. Wow. Some of you may not remember Woolworths department store, but it was the department store many, many years ago. And we sold them for a nickel each. Woolworths used to turn around and sell them for 19 cents. We hadn't figured out how to eliminate the middleman at that point, but we did. So that was my first career, if you will. But after staying home for 9 years with my sons, my two sons, I decided it was time for Marg to get back out into the workforce. And 9 years in business, as you all know, is a lifetime. So many things change. So for a woman trying to get back into the workforce, it's very challenging. But I had a sales background, so I was fortunate enough to take a position with a multinational corporation as a sales manager. And I actually worked there for 5 years. But after 5 years of working long, hard hours, I was feeling very unappreciated. And I know a lot of women entrepreneurs start out in the corporate world and then go out into entrepreneurship or business ownership. So I decided if I'm going to work this hard, it's going to be for me. So I started doing research and lots of deliberation, and I decided that I'd like to buy a 3M dealership. Now, when you think of 3M, what do you think of? Scotch tape, Post-it notes. We all think of 3M as those products. But 3M also sold overhead projectors and transparency films. That was the communication tool in education and business for over 30 years. So I thought, I could always talk pretty well. So I wanted to help people with their communications. The problem was I needed $40,000 to buy the dealership. Now, I'm sure all of you realize that in 1980, a woman could not walk into a bank and get a loan to start a business. Fortunately, things have changed. But because I didn't have any assets other than the family home, which my husband owned jointly, that's what I needed to mortgage to get the loan to start my business. So my husband, because it was a joint ownership, had to have separate legal counsel. When we went to meet with the lawyers, they actually asked him, were you coerced in any way? I think they were used to the husbands borrowing money and the wives were asked that question. But my husband told them he was, and he loved every minute of it. And I thought, I'm going to choke him when I get him back in the car. But anyway, and I'm happy to report things really have changed and women can get bank loans today. And I did get the money. And then I started my 3M dealership, selling overhead projectors and transparency films. My first year in business, I sold a whopping $90,000. And at a 30% margin, guess what? By the time I rented warehouse, hired an assistant, there wasn't much money left over to pay Marg. So things had to change. But the good news when you're selling consumables is that as you grow your business, you also grow the revenues as you get more customers. But 90,000 was a lot of $300 overheads and $25 boxes of film. So lots of selling. So the first 12 years in my business, I worked 60 to 90 hours a week and grew the business to $2.5 million in revenue. But I knew there was a lot more out there in the marketplace. So at about that point, 1992, one of my clients invited me to come to a networking event. And at that event, I met two women. One owned an ad agency and one owned a resort, Hockley Valley Resort, which is just northwest of Toronto. And you know how you just meet some people and you just click? We spent the whole night talking about our businesses, sharing our challenges, looking for solutions together. We enjoyed talking so much that the event was over and we're still there talking. And Nancy, who owned the resort, also owned a banquet facility near the airport. And she had a little restaurant on the end where she only served lunch. So she said, ladies, why don't we get together next Friday after work? Come on to my little restaurant. It's not open to the public in the evening. We're going to have wine and cheese and we're going to solve all of our business problems. So we started meeting. And the next thing you know, other women heard about us and they wanted to join us too. And that was the beginning of Women Presidents Organization in Canada. So we started meeting with our advisory board once a month. Once I became part of the advisory board, I became much more strategic, much more analytical. I really managed to grow my business by, instead of working harder, working smarter. And so I grew in the next 8 years over 1,100%. And I was named to Canada's top 100 women entrepreneurs by Profit and Chatelaine magazine. I actually ranked in the top 10 for 11 years. The business continued to grow with organized and organic growth, but also by acquisition. You know, there's only 3 ways to grow a business: sell more to the customers you've got, get new customers, or acquire another business. I mean, I'm oversimplifying it here, but that's the only 3 ways to grow a business. So as my business grew, I had 3 divisions because I had expanded in the technology arena and embraced that technology. And I started getting involved in my industry. And that's one thing I want to highly recommend. Please write this down and remember, get involved in your industries. Because I started going to manufacturers' rollouts. And I saw something that sat on top of the overhead projector and connected directly to the computer. Well, it didn't take a rocket scientist to figure out all those nice consumable boxes of 3M film I was selling were going to be not needed anymore. And as things evolved, soon manufacturers were introducing a box with its own light source that connected to the computer. Data projectors arrived. If I hadn't been aware of that and kept selling my same old products, I would have been out of business. So it's really important to understand the footprint of your suppliers, their roadmap, where are they heading? So I had 3 divisions: a staging division, and I didn't stage rock concerts or corporate, it was just corporate events. I also had a design build. We started building boardrooms, classrooms, network operation centers. We even built simulation rooms for the Canadian Space Agency. We had 7 offices across the country. I slowly grew those during those 8 years. And at the end of the growth, at the peak of our business, we had 180 employees. Those of you who have employees, I know you'll understand when I say, when we stop worrying about money, we start worrying about people. That's what we lose sleep over. In fact, the best day in my whole business career was the day I hired an HR director. And I said to him, "Here you go, George." And I passed him 180 files. So it was quite an interesting time. But at that point, at the revenue I was at, I was approached by a US company. And so I did what every good capitalist does. I sold my business to a $1.3 billion publicly traded company out of Dayton, Ohio. They asked me to stay on for 3 years as a regional president, and I agreed. I thought I can keep growing the business with someone else's money. And unfortunately, in just under the 3 years, they bankrupted the whole corporation. So I arrived at work one day, and all my staff were locked out in the parking lot. Ernst & Young had locked the doors. So that's the day you put your big girl panties on and start looking for solutions. Well, it was one of my advisory board members who came to my rescue. This woman introduced me to the vice president of the bank she was dealing with, and she was my advocate. She said, "This woman grew this business to this. She sold it. She didn't bankrupt it. You know, she has all this skill. She still has most of the people that were there before. And I think you should help her." So I managed to get the money to buy back my old business assets from Ernst & Young and build it up again. It took me 9 years, but I was able to build it up and I sold it again. So you see why I mean about advisory boards being so powerful. So I've always mentored other business owners, and I now have a private practice. I'm also involved with building advisory boards for women through Grow Your Biz, and I'm a mentor for Trenval Development Corporation. Anyone in the Southeastern Ontario region will have heard of them. But I also want to share with you, when I came time to retire, after I sold my business the second time, my advisory board took me up to Hockley Valley for a retirement dinner. And we had a wonderful dinner with copious amounts of wine. We all stayed overnight, of course. And the next morning we're packing up, as far as I'm concerned, to go home. And they said, we had breakfast together, and they said, no, we're not going home. We're going up to the boardroom. And I go up to the boardroom with my advisory board, and they say, Marg, they have a big sign up, Marg's Next Adventure. I mean, how many people do that for you? We had become such a bonded group. And this was, it takes time to build an advisory board that is bonded like this. But they went around the room one by one and told me what they felt I should be doing. They said, you've always helped and mentored other women. We see you doing that. And one of the women in the room said to me, and Marg, I want to be your first client. And I helped her take her architectural design firm from about 2 million at that point up to over 10 million within 3 years. So that's my excitement now. I get excited when other people are successful, and that's why I like to help. So what else are we going to talk about today besides Marg? Lots. Why have an advisory board? I think I've given you a few reasons already, but I'll talk about Grow Your Biz advisory boards because that's what I'm very familiar with, and all the benefits of an advisory board, what a typical monthly meeting looks like. And then I want to share with you how I personally benefited and some of the other events that happen as well. Now, you've probably already built a business. It's survived, perhaps even thrived, but you're often wondering, what do I do next? Do I keep growing? Do I need to maintain and stay the same? And a board can certainly help you do that. There've been a lot of studies done on advisory boards. In fact, there was one done by Fast Company magazine and business.com statistics. And they reported that business owners who participate in a facilitated peer advisory board have increases to not only the bottom line of 64%, top line sales of 56%, but their productivity of their staff increases 60%. I mean, that's amazing when you look at those numbers. The Business Development Bank also did a study, and these are just some of the highlights. The people they interviewed, 86% believed that an advisory board had a significant impact on their success. The sales growth after 3 years grew 66.8% versus 22.9% in previous years. And the productivity rose to almost 6% versus 3.2%. I mean, that's amazing when you stop and look at those figures. So I should have mentioned at the beginning, and I apologize, like if you have any questions, hopefully you will pop them in the chat and we can deal with them later because I can't see everyone. So if you put your hand up, I won't see it, but maybe Carrie will be keeping an eye on that for me. So thank you. So why Grow Your Biz? Grow Your Biz offers advisory boards for peer-to-peer groups to come together to learn in a structured, facilitated process. Our goal is to really develop the local economy with a focus on growing women business owners. Grow Your Biz is basically all women, but we do have one co-ed board out in British Columbia because there's a lot of husband and wife businesses in that region. So we're testing it there. We want to help businesses develop through technology with virtual boards in order for members to connect wherever they live in the world. Today, we have members in 18 countries. Previous to COVID, we were in mainly North America. So there have been some benefits to using technology during COVID. Most of our boards are virtual. Some are hybrid models, but this enables me to work with women all over the world. Some of our vision for Grow Your Biz is that we have a direct impact on the economic growth and empowerment of millions around the world by enabling and developing small and medium-sized businesses. You know, it's hard to believe, but in Canada, more people are employed by small and medium-sized businesses than the large corporations. At Grow Your Biz, we deal with women from Afghanistan to Zanzibar. So really the whole spectrum of the alphabet. And it never ceases to amaze me, some of the businesses these women have. We deal a lot with the women in the UN, working on the Sustainable Development Goals. And I'm currently working with a young woman in Botswana. And in Botswana, the farmers have a real problem. Elephants trample all their crops, and it's a big issue. So this young woman discovered that elephants are afraid of bees. Who knew? So she's built beehives for the farm, helped the farmers build beehives to attract bees, and they've put them around the perimeter of their fields. Not only does it give the farmers an extra cash crop, the honey, they can use it to feed their families, but also it's protecting all of their other crops. They get a much larger yield now. So who knew? You know, as I say, it absolutely amazes me at some of the businesses the women have today. I'm also working with a young woman. She's Canadian, but she was living in the Dominican Republic, and she started a business there called Brave Soles, like the soles of your shoes, SOLES. And she makes these incredibly beautiful sandals from recycled tires and leftover pieces of leather. It's just amazing. Brave Soles, she has a website, check her out. Crystal is a very talented young woman, a designer. So again, really interesting businesses. So our core values, we champion our members. We help them in any way we can. And we're a connector for business. You know, if someone on one board needs something and we don't have the expertise, we'll find it. We create environments to share knowledge, and we're a collaborator for growth. It's just what we do for our members. So these are some of our members, and they're all over the world, but you can't see maybe too well this lady at the top. She's gathering sea flora from the West Coast, just off British Columbia. And she uses some of those ingredients to create a skincare line. Just amazing. This young woman, I'll go down here with my mouse down at the bottom towards the left, is Zuli. Zuli's from Colombia. And Zuli has developed a beautiful shower cap. You may see her. She's very prevalent on LinkedIn. And it's got toweling inside, but the outside is like a plastic. And she was on Dragon's Den recently. Excuse me. But she's now developing also a line of organic deodorants. So just amazing. I'm just going to take a bit of water here. Sorry.
While you're doing that, Marg, I'll just mention that I see one of my friends on that poster board. So it just shows you how, you know, it's not just around the world, it's right in our own backyard.
That's right. It's a small world, believe me. So next to Zuli is Jill Ackerman, and Jill is a former nurse. Now, this is very true of a lot of women. You know, we have a career, and then we stay home to have families, and then we decide rather than going back into our original career, we're going to do something different. So Jill today stages homes for real estate agents, getting them ready for sale. And next to Jill is a remarkable young woman of color, Chantel Carter. And Chantel had a very difficult time finding lingerie to match her skin tone. So she's developed a company, it's called Love and Nudes, and she has all shades of lingerie for different skin tones. So just amazing. You know, they say fill a need. You find a need, fill a need. That's a business. And then this young lady just up here, Julia Christensen, has just published her 10th book. So just amazing some of the accomplishments our members have actually achieved. And with, you know, there's a story behind, as Carrie always says, everyone has a story, and there's a story behind every one of these faces. All of our chairs are entrepreneurs. I think unless you've stayed up at 3 o'clock in the morning wondering about how am I going to make payroll, like they don't get it. So it's really important to us that when we hire a chair to run a board, that they have experience of running their own business. So I think it's very, very important. And we have women from all walks of life. This one is covered up, but Vanya is also, she teaches at the Ivy School. So some really great women, high caliber. We're also blessed to have trusted advisors from, you know, a lot of large corporations. So first of all, BMO, they help us dramatically. When we were having meetings in person, we met in all of their boardrooms. We have this young woman here from Salesforce. You're probably all familiar with that software. Also with TELUS, also Ondine. This is the woman that developed, you know, the product, I mean, you heard about it when COVID hit, Sunnybrook were testing it. It's where you put some tools in your nose and it sort of kills off any bacteria. So it was very successful. And so some amazing women. It's just a pleasure to work with them. We also have global trusted advisors. And number one is Madeline Baker. And Madeline Baker is the board chair of We Be Canada, Women Business Enterprises. If you're not familiar with that organization, what it does is introduce women entrepreneurs. The company must be 51% owned by women. So you must own at least that amount of it. But they will introduce you to large corporations. For example, if you wanted to sell something to Walmart, you may not be able to get an appointment with Walmart. They will make the introduction for you. So We Be Canada. Madeline is also the director of TELUS in their business solutions division. Next to her is Teresa Gulan-Zuleta, and she has had 23 years of professional services, including exporting consumer goods, services, and food products to more than 50 countries. So if we have anyone looking to export and they are running into any challenges, we call on Teresa to help us. So amazing what she can do. Angela Hoffman is the president of World Strategies, which is a certified woman-owned government affairs and policies consulting firm, advising the U.S. Congress and executive branch of the U.S. government. And Amanda Ellis, who's a little hidden by I don't know if she's hidden for you, but depending on where we're positioning, you may be across the top. Amanda was the former UN ambassador for New Zealand. And currently she's the executive director of the Asia Pacific region for the Global Institute of Sustainability and Innovation. She also works with Vital Voices in the US. The young woman, Amanda Gorman, who was the poet that spoke at President Biden's inauguration, she was a member of Vital Voices. She actually had a speech impediment. You would never know it today, but when she joined Vital Voices, she actually had a speech impediment. So it's amazing what can happen. So let's talk about benefits of having an advisory board. And if you are currently, you have been part of a peer-to-peer advisory board, or you have some sort of advisory board, maybe you can put that in the chat. Yes, I have one, or no, I don't. So some of the benefits are international connections. We do a networking event every month online, which is free, and you can connect with people all over the world. You also get immediate and practical solutions to your challenges. You know, if you're having an issue and you voice it at the meeting, you'll have 5 or 6 people that have been through the same thing and they've already found a solution, and they will share that with you. We're going to help you get more money on the bottom line. And that's really important, helping you to analyze your profit and loss statements. You know, there's only 2 ways to get more money on the bottom line: sell more or cut your costs. When I bought back my old company from from out of bankruptcy from Ernst & Young, I took the P&L, the profit and loss statement, and I went down every line item because I needed to know where I was bleeding, where all the money was going. And I discovered we were spending $30,000 a year on coffee in our offices. So don't panic. I did not deny my staff caffeine, but we certainly changed the way we were buying coffee. So more money on the bottom line. Access to top experts. It's really important that if you have a problem, that we can match you up with people that will help you. If we don't have the expertise around the table, we'll bring it in. We'll find it and we'll bring it in for you. One of the benefits I found from having, being able to meet with trusted advisors. How many of you have ever gone to the bank to ask for money and don't know where to start? Maybe you avoid going to the bank for money because you're not sure, and you prevent yourself from growing because you're struggling to pay for everything yourself. So being able to go to the bank, to talk to your accountant, to talk to your lawyers when you need to, very, very important. As I mentioned, our chairs are entrepreneurs. And it's a safe place to be honest. Everyone signs a confidentiality agreement and a code of conduct. You have local, regional, national, and international networking every month. It's free, not just for members. We open it up to the public at some points. And we will help you build a Fortune 500 image. You know, when you look successful and you behave as a successful business owner, it's amazing what comes your way. And you're in with like-minded women businesses. The focus is on success. And for me, it really helped me just be smarter. You know, I was struggling along, you know, working 60 to 90 hours a week. I got it to 2.5 million. But once I had my advisory board, the next 8 years, we grew dramatically because I started doing things differently. You know, it's amazing how even though there was no competitors at my table, I could learn from other businesses by some of the things they did. Now, a typical monthly meeting at Grow Your Biz, it really addresses various business issues and challenges. So, financial concerns, any of you had any of those? Organizational development. Let me ask you, how many of you have an org chart of your company? Really good to have, because you can see where you have the gaps, you know who's reporting to who, and you can build where you need. Marketing strategies, big challenge today. So many different platforms. What's best? Should we be on LinkedIn? Should we be on, you know, all the other Instagram? Should I be on Twitter or not anymore, maybe because there's so much controversy? Where should I be marketing? But never underestimate referral marketing. You know, the old word of mouth is still very powerful. Pricing and costing is a big issue. You know, women who offer services typically, I'm not saying everyone, but typically underestimate their value. And then how do you cost things? When I was buying technology from Japan, not only did I have to take the cost of the product, the cost of the duty to bring it into the country, the cost of financing it, because most of them had to be paid in US dollars, and the US dollar was constantly fluctuating. So taking all of that into consideration when you build your price lists. Hiring, firing, and retaining talent. We could probably spend quite a few meetings on that alone. Today, it's very challenging. It seems like everybody retired after COVID. So, you know, hiring, firing is very challenging too, and retaining that talent. So there are many, many things you can do. But the issues are typically defined by the advisory board members. They tell us what they want on the agenda. So the benefit is that Grow Your Biz has a direct impact on the growth of each member's business. But I want to share with you, and I'm just going to grab a mouthful of coffee first, all the lessons that I personally learned. So, onboarding new employees. This was something I learned from one of the board members who was an HR lawyer. And she explained that a new employee should have signed the contract before they actually come to work, which we were having them sign when we came in that first morning. But no, that's not what should be done legally. Also, what we started doing was the first week for a new employee was planned out. So the first day they arrived, you know, they were signed up onto the payroll banking. We got all their key information. We would get their information for the benefits package, even though they weren't probably, you know, eligible till 90 days were up, but we wanted all their information. And then that first day, providing my schedule permitted, I would take that person to lunch. You know, you've come to a new place of business. You don't know where all the local restaurants are. You don't know that they have a cafeteria. So I would always take them to lunch, and it was an opportunity for me to get to know them even more on a personal level and them to know me. And I would explain where our company was going, the plans, the vision for our company, the mission. and how they fit into that picture. So hopefully I made them feel welcome. We were excited about having them, and I knew they were going to make a difference for us. The rest of the week, they were either shadowing other people or spending time. They would actually sit for 1 hour beside our receptionist. In those days, we still had receptionists. And they would sit beside her and listen to how she answered the phone, how she talked about our company, how she spoke to potential customers. It was amazing, the value, even though they were never going to answer the phones for us. They knew how we addressed our clients or potential clients. Then they would probably the next day go to lunch with their direct report. They would, if they were in sales, we would have them shadow other salespeople on the road. And actually, I even had them spend 2 hours in the warehouse with the shipper receiver because I wanted them to see the whole picture. And that was so valuable. Do you know I had less than 5% turnover? Amazing, really, in a larger company. I learned how to delegate. How many of us are really good at delegating as entrepreneurs? Why? We can do it better, faster ourselves, right? Not good. So I learned that when I pass off a project to someone, I would say to them, just send me a little email on Friday or come see me, depending on what they were doing. And let's just talk about where you are in that cycle. So if they got off track, it was a great opportunity for me to get them back on track, but also a chance for me to mentor or champion them. So very important to learn how to delegate by having a reporting protocol in place. So they're reporting back to you. If I hired a salesperson, you can't expect salespeople to start generating revenue right away. But at the end of each week, I would have them send me an email. How many meetings did you have? How many phone calls did you make? And what were the results? Because I knew if the activity was there, the sales would come. I want to encourage all of you, stop doing the $20 an hour work and do the $200 an hour work. I know you can do your QuickBooks. It's so easy to do your invoicing every Friday. Hire a bookkeeper. First of all, they know what they're doing. It will be very inexpensive. You may only need them for a couple of hours a week, if that, depending on how big you are. And you spend that time focusing on developing and growing your business. Very, very important. And that's hard because we know we can do it faster and better ourselves, right? So take the time, invest in contractors. Do you know it's a gig economy today? People are going from gig to gig to gig. That's why it's so hard to hire. People don't want to work full time. They want to work for a while, like my grandson, and then go to Japan for 3 weeks. It just depends on what their goals in life are. Also, I highly recommend you develop a relationship with your banker. One of the challenges I faced in my business was one of my biggest clients was the Department of National Defense. And I said to my advisory board, every March, if I don't ship to them, they cancel the orders. And so they're all saying, well, why don't you bring in more inventory? Well, I don't have the cash flow. So they said, you better develop a relationship with your banker, Marg. So I started taking my banker to lunch once a month. Now, it was the best investment I ever made because I bent his ear on my business. He knew as much about my business as I did. So in January of each year, I would pick up the phone. Hi, Joe, how are you? Guess what? I need a bulge on my line. In January, I had to buy all the inventory for the Department of National Defense orders that I had to ship in March. And it got to be after a couple of years, he said, no problem, Mark, how much do you need? 1 or 1.5 million? And I always took the bigger amount because you never know what you're going to need, right? So develop a relationship with your banker. Your best friends in business, I also learned this from my advisory board, is your banker, your lawyer, your accountant, and your hairdresser. And it depends on the day who's most important. Depends on what's happening in your life. Also, plan ahead. You know, it's really important that we have plans ahead. Prepare your budget. You know, we all make sales budgets, but do we do cash flow budgets? That's equally as important as doing a sales forecast. You know, setting out your year without your budget in place is like setting off on a road trip without your GPS or without a map. You need to know where you're going. And as I mentioned earlier, it was my advisory board who encouraged me to get involved in my industry. So as I said, I started going to manufacturers' rollouts. I knew what was coming to market before it even hit the market. And I could have my strategy, my marketing plans already in place before it was even available. So when you get involved in your industry, you get insight into what's going on. It's also very, very important to invest in systems improvement, you know, computers, whatever you need that will streamline the work the employees do. It's very, very important. I'm sorry, Carrie, I'm seeing someone waiting. Do they need to come in?
Sorry about that. Yeah, let me take care of it.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure we weren't keeping somebody hanging there. So invest in the systems, you know, your computer systems, and invest in your employees. You know, we used CAD, computer-aided design, a lot to design the boardrooms we were doing. And so we had to have our designers using the latest version of CAD. So I used to make sure, you know, that they would go, I would book them into the night school courses. We would pay for it for them to go. And again, with our manufacturers, they often would train our people on new products coming. I just had to get them into wherever it was, usually in the States. And so I just have to fly them there and pay for their hotel. But the training was actually done by our manufacturers. So invest in your employees. I remember once we did a one-page flyer in the report on business in the Globe and Mail. We were introducing a 5-pound projector. I mean, that was died and gone to heaven. You know, I was a lot taller when I started this company because the first projectors were 40 pounds and I was lugging them around on my shoulders. And so 5 pounds, you know, for the traveling warriors, sales warriors, was amazing. So we had 300 calls that morning to our switchboard. I thought my receptionist was going to quit. So at lunchtime, I went out and I bought her flowers and chocolate. I said, I just want you to know how much I appreciate how you handled everything so smoothly this morning. Because, I mean, she was a little frazzled, to say the least. We didn't typically get 300 calls every morning. I also want to encourage you, because this is something I learned from my board too, was to have fun at work. You know, we work so hard. And the good news, when you have a sales organization like I did, you can do all sorts of contests. So I remember one, I matched a salesperson with an admin person and they became a team. And it was based on revenues, of course. And so I also remember one of my top salesmen, Bob was 6'3", very tall, very well-dressed, distinguished-looking gentleman, a little gray at the temple. And so he came back to the office one day and he was matched up with the receptionist. So he comes walking and she says, "What are you doing here? Get out, go sell." So she's sending him back out to sell. I couldn't do that as his boss, but she certainly could. So the winners of that particular contest, I had arranged with Lone Star Restaurant. The winners sat down one side of the table and had steak and wine, and the loser sat down the other side of the table and had beans and beer. And so it was just fun. You know, we really did things to have fun. And I think that's really important. Probably the most fun we had was a contest where we had 2 separate sales divisions. One was the staging division, and the other was the design build division. And we ran a contest, and the salespeople who went over their quotas the most got extra balls. And these balls were used and I rented 2 dunk tanks, put them in the parking lot. We had the fire department come and fill them. And they got to use those balls to dunk their managers into the dunk tank. So we had lots of fun with that. Not only were all of our employees out in the parking lot, but the neighboring businesses were all out in the parking lot to see what was going on as well. But it's really important that we have fun at work. You know, make it fun for your people. It's so important. And we've always focused on achievement and recognition. And when we were awarded the 50 best private managed companies, I always told my employees, you know, when we do well, we all do well. And so as a thank you to them, because they're the ones that executed our best practices every day, I took all of our employees and their staff, their families, all of the employees and their significant others and their children to Chateau Montebello for the weekend. So we flew in from Vancouver and Calgary and Edmonton and from the East Coast and Ottawa, they drove, of course. But we had an incredible weekend. Took me a long time to get over the bar bill, which was, you know, 7 figures. So it was really a bit astounding. But you know what? We had fun, and they deserved it. They deserved to have a really good time. So I want to also encourage all of you to never stop learning. I mean, this is something that is, you know, really resonates for all of us. So I'm going to pause right now. I've got more of my presentation to show you, but I'm going to stop sharing because I'd like to hear from some of you. I'd like to know a little bit about some of you, if you can share. And you maybe weren't expecting this, but here we go. I'm going to stop sharing, Carrie, okay? And then hopefully we'll see everyone. Now, most of you don't have your cameras on and you're muted. So maybe you can unmute. Don't worry. Even if you're in your pajamas, we want to see you. So let's see if someone will come on. So Sunita, are you there?
I actually have a question for you, Marg, while
Yes.
you are while people are going to the Q&A. You talked about this idea about most of the advisory boards are virtual, which makes a lot of sense. So do you find that there's a value in having these advisory boards made up of local people, like in sort of like, for instance, if we're in Ontario, should be, you know, be really creating a board that's, you know, people here. Obviously these seem to be national boards or even global boards. Like, what's your take on that? Does it depend on the business, or, you know, what are your thoughts for someone building their own advisory board?
Right. So initially, all of the boards were done geographically. Like we had a Burlington board, we had a Niagara board, we had 4 boards in Toronto, we had a Markham and Richmond Hill board. So the beauty of it is those are still the basis of the virtual boards. And the nice part about that is that we get together now and again. I'm going to talk a little bit about that next. So the Burlington Niagara board get together and we have a lunch once a quarter. And it's more social, but you'd be amazed the connections that are made and the business that's done. It really is quite interesting. So Carrie, thank you for putting on your screen, Carrie Fraser. And can you tell me a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, I run a custom software development shop, and we do a whole slew of different custom software development from Web3 to websites. So runs the full gamut.
Where are you located?
In Kingston, actually.
Kingston? Oh, very good. Very good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what's the biggest challenge you're facing today? Maybe you can just share that with me.
Well, sales right now, but a lot, I mean, all the points you touched on, we've experienced challenges with all aspects of that. So everything's really resonated with me in what you're saying. But I think I will say that the integration of programs that I've had with WeCan have greatly assisted with that. And I can certainly see where I probably couldn't have before, but I can certainly see what the advantages would be to having an advisory board. It's you just have to continue to have these conversations in order to work things out and reprioritize and redress. And I love your story. It's very inspirational that you built your business up. You had an epic situation, and then you went back and you built it up again. Like the resilience that takes, I can totally appreciate.
It's called
not
grit.
for the faint of heart. Yes,
it's
it
called
really
grit.
is.
Yeah, I went to hear Angela Duckworth speak, and she spoke about grit, and it's really very important for all entrepreneurs. Yeah, so I see Nicola is joining us. So Nicola, whereabouts are you located? Thank you, Carrie.
I am in Hamilton.
Oh, excellent. Very good. And what do you do?
I'm a newly licensed paralegal, so I just started my own firm in March.
Good for you. Good for you. That's excellent. So lots of exciting things happening or not yet?
Not yet. I've been mainly doing the background work, so the website, advertising, marketing, and just trying to get my name out there.
Good. And that's what's important. So get out to networking, join the board of trade, that sort of thing is really important. And, quite frankly, I always encourage women that after they've had their business at least 2 years, because you need to, build your business model, build your base, start building the challenges you're going to be facing as you get larger and as you get more clients.
Okay.
And you might want to think about connecting with some of the lawyers in your region.
Yes. I was at the mayor's breakfast this morning.
Oh, very good. Very good.
So I've just been trying to network. I'm a part of the chamber.
Yes,
Hamilton
good.
Chamber of Commerce. So I've just been going out to all the networking events and anything that I can join or go on the Zoom calls or anything like that. I try to go because I'm always trying to learn something new.
Good for you. Good for you. No, that's great. Yeah. And, I would give yourself a couple of years before you're ready for an advisory board.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yes. Thank
Okay.
you.
You're very welcome. I don't think anyone else has come on. They're too shy.
I do have a question, Mark, though, and I'm not sure if this is something you're still going to cover, but when you talk about the composition of these advisory boards, I was curious to know, should you be thinking of, okay, I need one legal person, one accounting person, one sales, is there sort of a matrix for that, or is it just sort of?
Yeah, no, we do try. I mean, as I mentioned, I do have a banker on every board. Not that she's there to promote her bank. She's there to really help with any financial questions. I try to get a lawyer and an accountant on every board. We don't have them on every one, but most of them we do. Just because those are the types of benefits you really want on your advisory board. The rest are women business owners, no competitors though. We do not put competitors on the same board because you're not going to share your challenges, your financial issues if your competitor's sitting across the table, right? We're just not. So anyway, but hopefully.
I know there's a couple more that have shown their faces. Thank you, folks. I do want to just address the question in the chat from Carrie, though, to follow up. How do you compensate an advisory board?
Okay, so the advisory boards with Grow Your Biz, there is a membership fee, but it's very reasonable. It's about the cost of a latte at Tim Hortons every day, and it's not a big investment in your business. So but we do also pay our chairs. I think it's really important that the chairs are compensated. So that's how we structure it. Does that help? Yeah.
And then I imagine that if you're doing one on a local level or even regional, it could be voluntary. I mean, I'm assuming.
Yeah. No, we haven't. I mean, we want people committed to running the boards.
Yeah.
And most of them, as I say, are entrepreneurs that have a lot of experience, and they share that knowledge too, which is really important. It really is. Yes.
Brilliant.
Yes. So is it Warman or is that your last name? Is that your first name, Warman?
Danny. Oh, Danny, you're on mute.
You're muted, dear.
Hi.
Hi, welcome. It's Danny, is it? Okay.
Yes, Danny. I think I started an advisory board. No, I'm just joking. A couple local artisans, we get together and we have little chit chats, and it just is so inspiring, and it just it always comes at a perfect time.
Good. Good.
Yours sounds like pretty impressive though. Like yeah, it sounds really large and yeah.
It's
Something
very
too
thoughtful.
big, I think too big. Like I'm just, yeah, for me right now, like how you told Nicole that she wasn't quite ready for an advisory board. I like getting together with local artisans and talking about our little problems, and to me, big problems. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, yours sounds pretty, yeah, big,
It's
big.
more formal, and there's nothing wrong. That's how we started, though. You know, we started out just
Yeah.
getting together for wine and cheese at Nancy's place type of thing, and it developed from there. So you might be surprised at how your group of artisans will develop.
Yeah.
As you grow,
Love it.
so will the
That's
advisory
right.
board most likely.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess we've started. Super.
Yeah,
Super.
you're started. Nina,
Thank
hi.
you.
Thank you, Danny. Hi, Nina.
Hi, I just want to say hello. Sorry, I joined late. I had another meeting, so I missed quite a bit of your presentation. I just wanted to introduce myself and say hello and thank you.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Nina. I am building a app for survivors of trauma. It's a mental health app that I'm building. It's an online business. We're still building it right now. So we just finished the design phase. We are into the development phase. So not quite launched yet. Hoping to launch at the end of the year. I'm definitely thinking about getting folks who have more experience than me to join to kind of help me through the launch phase, but then also scale up, look for bigger investments. Right now, we're running off grants. We've been fortunate to receive quite a few grants, and we're just using that money to build the first MVP, launch it. But what we really want to do is then scale the app so that it starts generating revenue, and also get more investment to build it out further with the research we gather. So I'm at that phase right now. So
where are you located, Nina?
I'm in Newmarket, so right north of Toronto. Yeah.
I used to live in Aurora, so I know that area very well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we used to be neighbors. So,
yeah, we have a woman in the UK who's built an app, and it's an app for communities. So she originally built an app for the kids for soccer. So they had a place where all the moms could go, this was when this game and this is where it is and all that sort of thing. And then she built us an app for the Grow Your Biz community. So it's amazing how you can share ideas. We have a marketplace. I'm not sure what your app's application is, but you might enjoy speaking to her. So you can connect with later and I can connect just to chat with her, because she's been through this process. It's been years too.
I would love that. I would love that. And so I missed a part of the presentation. So just a clarifying question. Sorry for the repetition.
That's okay. And we have, just so you know, we have taped it.
Okay, great.
We'll be letting you know the information where you can see the whole thing later.
All right, awesome. So is the prospect to then join as a member as part of Grow Your Biz? Is that what we were discussing?
Yes.
Okay, so I can find it on the website then, right? If I go on, I can find it.
Thank you, Nina.
Thank you. Very nice to meet you.
My pleasure. Okay, so I think everyone else is staying hidden, so we'll go back. I'll go back and share my screen. Okay, Carrie? Yeah, okay. Unless somebody, nope. Very good. Okay. Okay, so I've got to get back to the right one. There we are. It may take me back to the beginning, so I do apologize, and I will run through everything very quickly just down the side. Okay. So I just finished sharing all of the key lessons that I personally learned as part of an advisory board. So I want to now also explain to you that there is a big difference between an advisory board and a board of directors. So a lot of people wonder about that. So a board of directors is a group of individuals who are responsible for making decisions on behalf of the company. And the board of directors usually has overall responsibility for the success or failure of the business. So very different from an informal advisory board. Board directors are often have ownership in the company, not always, but quite often do, and they have a big responsibility to make sure the company is successful. Now, I did build a board of directors when I got larger, and I was able to have on my board of directors the retired CEO of Ultramar, the oil company. I had a senior vice president of one of the Canadian banks. And just so you know, she actually was my sister. So when we were selling those goldfish at the age of 10 and 6, even though she was younger than me, she wanted to manage the money. And ironically, she was in her first year of university at U of T studying nuclear physics. And she got a summer job as a bank teller, got interested in banking, switched her major, and went to work for CIBC. And she stayed there for 35 years until she retired. But ironically enough, she always wanted to manage the money. So I guess, even from a very young age, sometimes their things are set in stone. So there you go. I also had on my board of directors a professional football player. Now, he also was an entrepreneur. He had his own business. I had a CA. Now, he was actually one of my employees. As the business got bigger, I needed a CA on staff. And so he was also part of my board of directors. And then last but not least on my board of directors was Bill Ferguson. And Bill Ferguson was from the Atlantic provinces, where my husband is from. And he was the money man. He was the financial advisor to Howard Webster. And you may not know that name, but Howard Webster was the original owner of the Blue Jays, the Toronto Blue Jays baseball team. So I thought if he can handle Howard's money, he can certainly help me manage mine. So he was part of my board of directors. Now, this was an informal board of directors, so a little different. And people used to say to me, Marg, how on earth did you get those people on your board? And you know what the answer was? I just asked. You'd be amazed how people will help you when you ask. If you don't ask, the answer is always no. So don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it. Very, very important. We have some incredible women on our boards. This is the Moncton, New Brunswick, a very vibrant board. And these women are from all walks of life, extremely successful. And then we have, you asked about the geography, that was the Moncton board. Then we had a Burlington board. But on the Burlington board today, we have women in Wasaga Beach and we have a woman in Ottawa. So even though it's still a geography, we've been able to add women from other areas as well. These women have done so well. This is Christine Dorison. Christine's husband was killed in a very serious car accident when her children were 6 and 4. So devastating for her. She owns her own business and she designs and builds and maintains playgrounds in schools, school boards, for condos, and for municipalities. When she joined GroYourBiz, she was doing about $400,000 a year. And 5 years later, this last year, 22, she closed over $4 million in revenue. So she's grown her business dramatically. She's added installers. She's moved out of her home office into an actual office. That's a big step for a lot of us to actually have a business office. This young lady in green, excuse me, is Laura Baldassari, and she's a marketing expert and has just written the book, Good to Grow Marketing. So you may want to look that up. But some very dynamite, very interesting women. Now, before COVID, every year I would hold a fireside chat. And it really was fireside. Look, you can see the fire up on the screens behind these three ladies. I did about 7 or 8 of them. And of course, COVID stopped that. But we typically held them on the 68th floor of First Canadian Place. Fabulous facility there. And we would usually get between 170 to 200 women attending. So This particular one, this is Michelle Bailey. She's the woman who owned the ad agency that I met at that networking event that became part of my board. And Michelle is not only the owner of Blazing, the agency, but she's a best-selling Forbes author today. Next to her is Christine McGee. You may recognize her. Christine owns Sleep Country Canada. And for many years, we saw her on television doing her own commercials. And you just see her like that. But when she shared, because I interviewed these ladies and then I opened it up to the floor so the other people can interview them as well. But Christine shared her story. And, you know, at times she was about 6 or 7 months pregnant. She's climbing through the warehouse to find a particular mattress for someone. You know, we don't see the journey. Sometimes we see very successful people in business, but we don't know the whole backstory. So really important. And then next to her is a very dear friend, Laura Williams. Laura is an HR lawyer. She speaks quite a bit at the HRPA, conference in Toronto. And she has about 50 to 60 people on staff now, because she not only has a law practice, she has an HR consulting practice. Her office is in Markham. And Laura is a great friend. She did this particular fireside chat for me. And then the following year, I had Tanya Joshan. She's the woman who started Steep Tea in Canada, and she was coming to be one of my speakers. And half an hour before the event, I get the dreaded phone call. Marg, it's Tanya. I've had an accident. I'm on the Gardiner Expressway. I'm not going to make it. At that time, Laura walked into the room, and I said, "Oh, Laura, you're back by popular demand. Can you step in for me?" And she was very gracious, and she's very humorous. So she really saved the day for me. So, but that's what your board members do, your advisory board. We also regularly had a retreat. And this was 3 of the Toronto boards meeting at Hockley Valley Resort. And all the members were ones who spoke. Whoops, I don't know why it keeps jumping there here. Let me go back. They spoke. This is Maxine Warsh. You maybe heard of Washcloths, but Maxine was the one that got us up at 6 o'clock to do yoga. Here is Chala. I don't know why this one must be on an automatic timer. And so Chala is the repositioning expert. And she talked about how we learn about money at the age of 7 and how we handle it. So it was very, very interesting. France Raymond. France actually worked for me for 6 years as a trainer and then went out to start her own business. So Ann Day, a lot of you may have heard of Ann Day, who did some wonderful events throughout the years. So just incredible women. This is Georgie Porgy. She makes the most amazing cakes that you'd ever see. And Tina Brillinger. Tina had her own business in food safety, but her father started Mr. Transmission. So she comes from a long history of entrepreneurs. And then every 2 years, which has been, again, delayed by COVID, we have a conference called the Accelerate Conference. And this April 2024, we will be having a conference in Vancouver at the Pan Pacific Hotel. It will be open to all women entrepreneurs. And we typically have the MC as Pamela Martin from CBC. We've had speakers like Dr. David Suzuki. We've had Diane Bernard speak. She owns the Seaflora Skincare. And Dr. Dion Laszlo Baker. Now, Dr. Baker has a company called DB Special Tea and Foods. And she was on maternity leave, and she was making her son popsicles out of orange juice. And he was up on the counter, of course, and he knocked over her herbal tea that spilled into her orange popsicles. And she thought, oh, well, it's herbal tea, it won't hurt anything. So she actually finished freezing it. And then they tasted so good, they're now part of her product line with the organic tea and juice. It's amazing how new products are developed. We also had Jody Wilson-Raybo speak. She's chair of the board of the BC Assembly of First Nations. Amazing woman. You may have seen her when she was with the government. And Dan Price. If you haven't heard of Dan Price, you need to look him up because he is the gentleman. He owned a credit card payment processing company in Seattle. And he took a pay decrease of about $1 million to make sure that the minimum pay to any of his employees was $70,000. So he reduced his own salary, so the minimum any of his employees would be paid was $70,000. And interestingly enough, his employees bought him a Tesla for his birthday. So I think they obviously appreciated what he did. So those are the types of people, we bring in for these conferences, but truly amazing. So I would like to leave you with a thought, and I'm certainly more than willing to answer any of your questions, but no one of us is as smart as all of us. When we pool our ideas, when we share our challenges, it's amazing how people will come to help you. So please remember that. No one of us is as smart as all of us.
Thank you so much for that, Marg.
Oh, you're very welcome.
I know that there is a couple questions in the chat,
Okay.
and we can squeeze them in here before we finish up today.
Perfect.
Carissa was asked about, she says, we're establishing an advisory board for a new social enterprise focused on supporting women-led food-based businesses by minimizing or removing barriers. So she's wondering how many people, first of all, should be on an advisory board. Should they be looking for a certain skill set, and then settle on the number after that? So that's the first question, the number of people and skill set.
Okay. So most of our boards, when they were in person, were like 12 to 15 people. But we find for virtual, we keep it between 6 to 10.
Okay, good to know.
Everybody gets, equal time. Ours are structured, and I think this is really important. Everyone does a check-in every month. So very important. And there's also learning every month. There's some sort of topic that's either been brought up previously or is pending, someone's having an issue and they've let us know ahead of time that we address. So I would keep the numbers, especially when you're first starting out, but definitely you want a certain skill set on the board. Someone who's had good business experience, not necessarily the same business as you. In fact, we don't recommend that, because looking at other businesses, like for example, when I first started my business, I was selling strictly product. So you ship a product, you invoice, net 30 days, right? When you start doing large projects, so for example, IBM gave me a project to do their executive briefing center in Markham. It was a $1.3 million project. So I had learned from my advisory board, Marg, you can't do net 30. You've got to get a deposit. You've got to bill at interim stages to keep the cash flow going. Like if I invoiced at 30 days. Now, unfortunately, when you work with someone like IBM, they tell you their terms. And they tell you, Marg, our after invoice and everything's done, it's 65 days. So a 6-month project where you're paying all of your staff, you're buying all of the gear, like you're supporting IBM's cash flow whether you like it or not, so it's challenging. But it made me realize in all of our other projects that we were doing interim billing. And I learned that from my advisory board, people that were in just different industries. It really helped me. So people with expertise, different backgrounds. I find when you get a really diverse board, I had a diverse business, people from all over the world, different countries, different backgrounds, they bring a lot to the table. They really do. So I always, when I'm building a board, I look for that as well.
That's brilliant. The other part of Chris's question is she's wondering how they should manage the board. Should the meetings be led by, by her with an agenda they need to cover, or should the process be driven by the advisory board?
Mm-hmm. Well, we certainly have it structured process. And I think that's important because otherwise it's just getting together for a coffee clutch. Like if there's no structure to the meeting, there's not going to be the same benefit. And you definitely need someone to lead, because it makes sure, like, someone will answer a question in 3 words and someone will answer a question in 20 minutes. Right. So you need to have someone controlling the meeting, because let's face it, people will try to take over sometimes, depending on the individual. we're all women entrepreneurs. We're strong individuals. You know, we can run any meeting. You may want to rotate. If you're all equal, you may want to rotate. Okay, next month you're leading the meeting. So you develop the agenda, you prepare the PowerPoint, whatever they're doing. So but
Yeah,
you
and
need
I think
structure.
one thing I found with those types of meetings, whether it's a mastermind, whether it's an advisory board, you need that one person who is setting up and making sure that the meeting is happening, right? Hey, everyone, don't forget today at 10 o'clock, we're having the meeting, or
Yeah.
here's the agenda. So I like the idea of having, now this is just a personal opinion, but of having one person overseeing kind of that administrative process. So everyone shows up. And then to your point, Marg, perhaps you do take turns in leading it, but there's like that administrative function that without it, it's not as formalized. And so maybe you meet, maybe you don't, maybe you miss 3 months, and then really is it effective what you're trying to do? Yeah.
And what I do, I send out 1 week in advance, and they know, I tell them it's coming out 1 week in advance. Our agenda, your check-in form, because we have an actual form that they fill in and they send in ahead of time for everyone to read. And then, you know, I will give them an agenda on the topic we're going to have. And sometimes we actually change the agenda. Like one of our members had to go and present to Loblaws companies. She had these organic muffin mixes she wanted to put in the shelves of Loblaws. And she was going to present the next day, and she was very nervous. So I asked permission of the board, can we just focus on helping her build her presentation? And so as a result, we did that, and everybody helped her.
Brilliant. Yeah. And I mean, it makes sense also in the Zoom chat. She's saying that we don't want to waste any of the people's time who are on our board. You know, and so like, I mean, sometimes it's just creating a process and saying, this is what we're going to follow for 6 months. We're going to try it out. If we need to tweak it, we'll tweak it along the way. But as I always say, don't worry about getting it perfect as you start, just start.
Exactly. That's it.
And obviously, if someone is a part of Grow Your Biz, that sort of formal process is provided. And so obviously there's much more guidance there, depending on what's needed. Yeah. All right, so we're pretty much at time here.
Yeah. And we're losing people as we go.
Yeah, no worries at all. It's so great to have had your wisdom and expertise here, Marg, as well. I'll let you just put up maybe your last screen one more time in case anybody wants to get in touch with you, because I think that is, you know, there may be questions that come up that people don't want to ask in the public forum.
Okay, keeps jumping back, but I'll zip back down to.
Yeah, and I did also put the website into the chat so that if anybody wanted to check out that website itself, of course, anybody can go there. But yeah, thank you so much, and for sharing your own story, but also this specific aspect of the success of your journey, which has been advisory board. So thank you on behalf of all of us, Marg, and thanks to everyone who showed up today. It's so grateful. We're so grateful to have had your participation. Enjoy your day, everyone.